Jane Eyre should not be drop dead gorgeous, and Cathy and Heathcliff don't need to have iPhone face for them to be attractive, even though that's what's considered as in right now. Yeah, I'm going there. Welcome back to Regency Rumours. I'm Kayla, and here on my channel, I explore period dramas, history, and historical fiction, and I don't really have the words right now to process the latest news in period dramas. I'm talking about the latest adaptation of Wuthering Heights, which is a classic novel by Emily Bronte, one of the most famous Gothic romance novels of all time. It's being adapted by Emerald Fennell, whose recent success with her film Saltburn has made everyone super excited about her adapting a Bronte classic. But then when the casting announcement came out, a lot of people were like, this is giving major iPhone/smartphone face vibes. Like, what on earth is going on right now? Today, we're going to be talking about the dilemma of iPhone face and period dramas using the new Wuthering Heights film as an example. I'm a big Bronte fan, if you can tell. So when I found out that there was going to be a new big budget Wuthering Heights film, I was over the moon. Quickly, if you're new to the channel, I'm a historian and a researcher. I make what I call historical yapping videos. For instance, my last video was taking a current topic like the very demure trend and exploring how it was used in a way more concerning way back in the Victorian era. I'm on a learning journey with content creation and commentary videos, so any sort of engagement would help my small channel to grow. So if you love some historical yapping, then please consider liking and subscribing. A lot of period dramas in the last 10 years or so, like a lot of rom-coms, have become TV-based only. They have smaller budgets, but often longer running times. There's not been a big budget like classic period drama like Pride and Prejudice or Sense and Sensibility, Jane Eyre, or Far from the Maddening Crowd for almost 10 years at this point. We've had a lot of leaps and bounds in television in period dramas like Downton Abbey, Bridgerton, Peaky Blinders, and The Gilded Age, but a sweeping period drama with a massive budget the same way that the 2005 Pride and Prejudice absolutely blew up online, I can't really think of any recently. So when Wuthering Heights was announced, myself and so many people were like, yes, bring back sweeping historical dramas. Bring back a gorgeous musical score that I won't be over 20 years later, glances that make my heart skip a beat, and in terms of Wuthering Heights, gothic heartbreak that leaves me absolutely wrecked. My body is ready. But then the casting for Heathcliff and Cathy were announced, and immediately so many of us could not even compute it. Like, I could not even wrap my brain around it. You know, when you're trying to justify when a guy ghosted you and you're like, maybe it's because he's been hit by a bus. That's the level of justification I was doing when I found out that Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi were cast as the main characters. I was like, well, maybe it'll be different main characters. If you don't know why this casting feels really odd, then we're gonna go through it now. But yeah, I don't really have the words. Very, very quickly, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte follows the life of Heathcliff, an orphan taken in by the Earnshaw family, and his toxic relationship with Catherine Earnshaw. They spiral into an obsessive relationship that impacts not only themselves, but the next generation. The novel explores tumultuous characters, dark themes, and the catastrophic power social class could have on people in 19th century Britain. At probably the most pivotal part of the story, they're around 18 or 19, so like right off the bat, these two actors are not those ages. And not that they have to be. Goodness knows that actors' ages have never stopped directors putting 20 and 30-year-olds in high school movies, but it can be distracting. I think Margot Robbie is one of the most stunning women I've ever seen in my life, but she doesn't pass as 19, and nor should she. And in a lot of ways, especially with the Brontes, focusing on needing to have the most stunning, attractive, hot off the presses actors who are really successful right now over lesser known actors who might be better fits feels really frustrating. Jane Eyre should not be drop dead gorgeous, and Cathy and Heathcliff don't need to have iPhone face for them to be attractive, even though that's what's considered as in right now. Yeah, I'm going there. So iPhone face is when an actor looks as if they know what an iPhone is. They look like they have a social media account based on their facial features. For some, that means cosmetic work, but for a lot of it, it's just things like modern grooming, teeth work, and hair colors. I'm not going to get in the weeds judging people's looks today and saying, this is where someone's had work, or I think that they've had this done. We're not doing that today. But if you're asking me my opinion, yeah, both of these two people, they look like they know what TikTok is. They don't look like right now that you could pick them up and immediately transport them into Yorkshire in the 1800s. Discourse around iPhone face has been growing over the last couple years or so, with people online being discontent with the level of perfect, polished faces in period dramas, expressing that so many of these actors look like models these days. Examples have been Florence Pugh in Little Women, Lily Rose Depp in The King, and Dakota Johnson in Persuasion. iPhone face is not an exact science, it's a trend. If you were to ask people why Jacob Elordi and Margot Robbie have iPhone faces, people probably wouldn't be able to spell it out to you exactly, and they would all give different answers. I don't 100% know why it feels this way, but some researchers say that it's because beauty trends and cosmetic procedures have made people look more homogenized today than they did in the past. Less actors and actresses have unique features in their faces, such as beauty marks, cleft lips, lazy eyes, thin lips, or more disproportionate faces than in the past. YouTuber Laura Jane Atelier, I think I'm saying her name correctly, said of the actress Farrah Fawcett, who was hugely popular in the 70s and a sex symbol. If you look at Farrah Fawcett, she has thin lips and a high nose bridge, as well as an angular jaw. She had a unique look and features that wouldn't be popular by today's standards. However, for a generation that are used to very polished reality TV shows with hosts and judges of all ages who look absolutely flawless, highly edited social media posts, and teenage influencers who look way more put together at 15 and 16 than me and my friends did as teenagers, their norm is people in the entertainment industry with bright faces and shining teeth. So that could be part of the decision making when it comes to Wuthering Heights. This is a new adaptation for a new generation who are less focused on faces needing to be historically accurate. Carolina Zabrowska did a great video on unattainable beauty standards today and how wealthy people have been photoshopping themselves long before Photoshop existed, essentially looking back at beauty standards through the ages and how there was one standard for the elite and one for the working or middle class, and how we shouldn't feel bad for not looking like celebrities. She talked about how frustrating it is that famous people pass off changes in their appearances as something that's a natural occurrence, and how that sets an unattainable beauty standard for everyday people. I would go a step further and say that it's now a bit frustrating that this is becoming standard in period dramas, because out in the real world, there can be actors and actresses who will be transparent about their appearances and educate people that it's not attainable for everyone to look the way that they do. A good example of this is Chris Hemsworth being open about not being able to maintain a highly muscular physique all the time, and how extreme weightlifting and dieting had an impact on his body. So at least teenagers growing up have a concept that people's appearances can be altered by things like Botox, fillers, filters, and photo editing. Beauty writer and critic Jessica DeFino said, "Awareness about cosmetic procedures today means that the average person is aware of the time, money, and effort it takes to look like a celebrity. In terms of cinema, it's meant to be this fantasy world, and beauty is also this fantasy world. Now, these two separate fantasies are colliding to take us out of the moment." In period dramas, we're kind of asked to step back in time while we're watching them. And there's this silent assumption that what we're seeing in front of us is a version of what it would have been like back then, bar like more fantastical versions of period dramas like Bridgerton. So now not only will teenagers be growing up seeing famous people in the media looking flawless and pretending like they haven't had anything done to look that way, They'll also be seeing period dramas where there wasn't actually a way to change people's appearances in the ways that we're able to today, and just thinking that there's something wrong with them because they don't look like a historical character. I feel like trends like iPhone face are complicated when it comes to cinema. There's not a straightforward answer on what to do about this, especially with period dramas. If we think about it, we could coin people's teeth these days as like Hollywood teeth or something like that. We already watch historically inaccurate period dramas every day with people having straight, perfect white teeth. Pretty much all characters have a full head of teeth in period dramas these days, and we don't bat an eye. Why? Because it's normal for us to see people with straight white teeth, because that reflects the majority of Western society today. It would be almost distracting for us to watch people's teeth as they would have actually been in certain time periods in the past. And I don't necessarily think that there were just all these toothless people running around in the 1700s to where no one had teeth, but the fact that rich figures like George Washington, who had all the resources in the world at the time, as much as you could, for a colonist to have nice teeth, even he began losing his in his 20s, and he kept losing teeth his whole life and had a set of dentures that he wore instead. There was also this trend in the Victorian era when sugar was becoming more popular and available, where women were given the pleasant experience of getting all of their teeth extracted before their wedding, so it wasn't costly in the future for their husband to pay for tooth extractions. So it definitely was way more of a problem back then than it is today. I believe watching people with a bunch of teeth problems would be really distracting on our screens. Of course, in some period dramas we do see it, but it sometimes feels like it's connected to poverty in period dramas like Dickens' novel adaptations and medieval period dramas where they depict people riddled with plague and like living off of dirty streets, when really it was a problem across the classes. And I'd argue that rich people who had access to more sweets to eat would lose their teeth faster than poorer ones who didn't have access to that type of foods. But I could be wrong. I'm not an expert on that, but yeah. In this day and age, when we're trying to be more inclusive and not pressure actresses to lose weight or have harmful diets or be sexualized on screen if they're not comfortable with that, we can't then tell them that in their personal lives, they can't do the skincare that they wish or cosmetic surgeries that make them feel more confident. It's really none of our business. So if the majority of actors look a certain way now because of modern cosmetics and skincare, asking them to change such drastic things about themselves for a role just to be historically accurate isn't fair. That being said, personally, watching people in period dramas with nice, healthy teeth is, in my mind, just a reminder of how far we've come with health and hygiene. People don't need to wear painful dentures made out of wood or even die from a toothache like they could back then. We can enjoy the central story of a period drama and focus on the most important aspects of the story that we can take away from, rather than being constantly reminded of the state of oral hygiene at the time, which is not what most period dramas are about. That's not to say that there aren't plenty of period dramas that are about the precariousness of health back in time, that focus on how easy it was for women to die in childbirth, or for poverty to be a huge proponent in childhood deaths, or minors getting cancers or lung infections without any sort of solid health care. Shows like The Nick, Call the Midwife, and Outlander are good examples of period dramas which show the state of healthcare in different time periods in the past through their storytelling, and they're so important to watch and understand. So I don't want people thinking that just glossing over these things in period dramas is the right thing to do, but I don't necessarily think that for every period drama we have to have background characters, with rotting black teeth, when there are other central stories to follow that already can show us the state of people's health in the past. On the flip side, I do feel like iPhone face can be a reminder that beauty standards these days are through the roof. It's expensive, sometimes it can be dangerous. Young women are traveling all over the world for risky surgeries to look like their favorite actors and reality stars. As a woman, I feel like the new trends are endless and I cannot keep up with them all. Gummies for hair growth, dermaplating, cortisol face, gua sha, red light therapy, Botox, fillers, mouth tape, whatever this sideways straw thing is. All this stuff takes up money and precious time we could be doing other things that bring us joy, and yet so many of us are worried about our appearances and keeping up with all of this. iPhone face and its reminder that many of us aren't upholding these modern beauty standards or can't afford to do so, I feel like sometimes it can overshadow our thoughts during a period drama over the storyline that we're supposed to be watching. If absolutely no thoughts about your own appearance runs through your head when you're watching drop-dead gorgeous actors and period dramas, then more power to you, but I am not that strong. The reality is that modern beauty standards are jutting up against our perceptions of people in the past, and it's not necessarily the actors' faults that this is happening. It's the standards that's being set in the media for these celebrities to look this way. In a quote from the Daily News, Rebecca Coogan says, "Teeth whitening, plastic surgery, body piercings, weight training, healthy eating, and yoga have made it a challenge to find the perfect period performer. Add the unforgiving nature of high-definition video on which more movies are made and seen, and the emergence of visually savvy audiences, and you often have a recipe for historical dissonance." In the case of Wuthering Heights, iPhone face can feel like it can be this domino effect for other aspects of a new film to just be off. Sometimes choosing star power over other factors can bleed into so many other areas of a production. I think choosing two Australian actors, it's not necessarily a dismissal of the importance of portraying the lives of the people of Yorkshire, but it certainly makes me side-eye a bit how the rest of the production could go. Contrasting the choice of these two actors to other recent projects set in Yorkshire, such as Gentleman Jack, All Creatures Great and Small, To Walk Invisible, and Happy Valley, the majority of the actors are either from Yorkshire or northern backgrounds or can pull off Yorkshire accents very well. We've got no idea if Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi could do Yorkshire accents. It is their job. I don't want to be too judgy, but I think there's nothing more distracting than watching 2 to 3 hours of a film where actors dip in and out of an accent that they're really struggling with. There is also that element of, upper class and lower class people in the Victorian era oftentimes having a different accent because of differing education. So it's not a case of every actor in Wuthering Heights needing to have a working class Yorkshire accent, but the fact that the two main stars of this don't have a Northern English background, it does concern me a little bit. If you get a chance, I would go and watch some of the shows that screenwriter Sally Wainwright has written, especially Gentleman Jack and To Walk Invisible, which is about the lives of the Bronte sisters. She was born and raised in West Yorkshire, and To Walk Invisible is a brutal film. It's very raw. It's a real look into the Bronte family's life, from their struggles with poverty, poor health, mental health struggles, their brother's dark battle with alcoholism. There is not an iPhone face in sight in that film, but it is definitely worth watching. The Yorkshire landscape, and especially the moors for Wuthering Heights specifically, is a huge part of the Brontes' writing. I think handling that with care is important. I'm from Asheville, North Carolina. My family are from the Blue Ridge Mountains. I've grown up with strong Southern Appalachian accents my whole life, and while I think that British actors can pull off American accents better than some Americans can sometimes, there's also plenty of times that I've watched stuff based in the mountains with bad accents, and it makes me so annoyed. It can make you feel like what you're watching is not a great representation of the people you've grown up around, or that it's kind of mocking them or dumbing them down in a way. And then if those actors also have iPhone faces, it's a lot. It's a lot. My husband Jordan and I have been talking about this. He's not from Yorkshire, but not too far away in County Durham, from a working class background from the north. And I thought it would be good for him to speak on this, give us his take on this new Wuthering Heights adaptation.
The thing for Wuthering Heights is that it's a story set in the Yorkshire moors, and representation is always important. But when it comes to roles of generic characters, we don't always think about what representation might mean for certain areas. And in the north of the UK, we have been typically ignored historically. I mean, even the BBC would not let regional accents be on primetime TV, and newsreaders had to put on a very specific accent. The Northeast, Yorkshire, they're very close. I'm not from Yorkshire, but the Northeast in general today in the UK is trying to improve its ability to get into the arts. There is a kind of a large push for more film and television in the Northeast, and I think there are a lot of great people working in this industry in that area. To not then go to that area, there are definitely great actors from there, and we should probably utilize them when and where we can. It's a similar kind of story for most of the North. There's kind of a pervasive thought that in order to be successful and intelligent and wealthy, you're kind of from the South in the UK, from London, from Surrey and everything around there. So when people from the North have gone into acting, especially 50, 60 years ago, they were all putting on the received pronunciation accent or the Queen's English at the time. For someone today to be allowed to use their real accent on television is really quite important. And Jodie Whittaker talks about this, being from the North and being cast as the Doctor. She's able to use her accent, her real accent, in television in a way that not many people are ever going to hear before now, and they can be quite important for the culture of that place. So I think being able to promote the culture of a place can be quite important, especially when the story is centered in the place and if the story is connected to being there. And I think we could all agree that Wuthering Heights is a kind of a strong candidate for that. It can be a bit disappointing then to have an actor placed in the role who may not understand that. It's a hard thing though, because at the end of the day, there's lots of things that goes into making a film, and saying that every actor has to be where the character is from is kind of a strange argument to go for. I could see both sides. It's annoying.
There's also the aspect of Heathcliff, Jacob Elordi's character in Wuthering Heights, being described as having dark hair, dark eyes, and dark skin in the book, which many readers and some scholars interpret as a person of color. While scholars aren't set on Heathcliff's exact ethnicity, lines in Wuthering Heights such as, "If you were a regular black," indicating that perhaps Heathcliff is mixed race, shows that he is at least not white. Dr. Corinne Fowler, who is a professor of colonialism and heritage, wrote an interesting piece in The Conversation called "Was Emily Bronte's Heathcliff Black?", which goes into the lasting effects of the transatlantic slave trade at the time, its connection to the Yorkshire landscape, and some of the theories of how a mixed-race boy could have grown up on the moors in the 1800s. While different scholars speculate he could have been Romani, Hispanic, or of Jamaican descent, Dr. Fowler estimates that in the very least, Heathcliff could have had some sort of colonial connections. She says, "When Nellie says that Heathcliff is not a regular black, she's not being merely metaphorical. She is clearly saying that while Heathcliff may not be like most black people she was aware of, he was indeed black." Wuthering Heights was published in 1847. It was written in the shadow of two formative international political events, which alarmed the British public: the late 18th century French and Haitian revolutions. Many of Bronte's readers would have known that the violent Haitian Revolution ended in independent rule and led to the decline of the plantation economy. There's only been one adaptation where Heathcliff is a person of color, the 2011 adaptation with James Howson as Heathcliff. One of the things I find interesting about researching this film is that the development of this version seemed to come up against similar pitfalls as the newest Wuthering Heights, but ended up avoiding them. In 2008, Natalie Portman was set to star as Kathy, but then dropped out. Michael Fassbender was cast as Heathcliff. He went on to play Mr. Rochester in Jane Eyre in 2011, which seemed like a better fit to me. Then in 2009, there was a new director and he cast Ed Westwick and Gemma Armitage to play Heathcliff and Kathy, and that never developed into anything. Then in 2010, the director Andrea Arnold was attached to the project and she cast Kaya Scodelario, who was more age appropriate for Kathy. She also wanted to acknowledge Heathcliff's heritage and scouted mixed-race actors from the Yorkshire area from the ages of 18 to 21. James Howson was picked to play Heathcliff basically from obscurity. He's not been in anything before Wuthering Heights, and he's not been in anything since. I've not seen this adaptation, so I can't comment on what I think about it, but from my limited research on different adaptations, it really feels like people are just not happy with any of the adaptations. Either Heathcliff and Cathy are too old, or the darkness of the moors isn't portrayed effectively, the toxicity of their relationship isn't shown accurately, or Heathcliff isn't of mixed race. I think this will be the biggest budget Wuthering Heights there's ever been. I think a lot of people are disappointed in this casting, not because Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi are bad actors or because they might not have chemistry, but because it kind of feels like lazy casting. Emerald Fennell, who is directing Wuthering Heights, her last film was Saltburn. Jacob Elordi was one of the main stars in Saltburn, and Margot Robbie was a producer on the film and is now a producer on Wuthering Heights. This, of course, happens with other films like Leonardo DiCaprio's working relationship with Martin Scorsese, so I don't want to be unfair to Emerald Fennell. This is a typical thing. But it does almost feel like Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi, they have just been chosen because they're top celebrities right now. They're hot commodities as actors, and they have a close relationship with the director. She knows what it's like to work with him, so it seems like a good fit in her mind. It kind of feels like these two actors are being shoehorned in to this project. Does that make sense? I'm not trying to be judgmental. I don't know enough about this. This is just the feelings that I get.
That's my opinion!
It's important to mention that Margot Robbie is a producer on Wuthering Heights. Her production company, Lucky Chap, is producing the film. I remember her in an interview talking about being a producer on Barbie and how she really wanted to be involved in the project, whether she starred in it or not. It's important to create a story around Barbie that was empowering to women and really highlighted the experience of womanhood. And she wanted to be a part of that. I have a sense that Margot Robbie is someone who is very passionate about the project she's involved in and will want to put care into Wuthering Heights and showcase Emily Bronte's work. But yeah, how do I put this? I feel like her instincts with Barbie and questioning whether or not she was the right fit for that, she was right on the money. I don't know that that's the case for Wuthering Heights, just because she's a producer for this film, that she's necessarily the right pick. And I don't think those two things have to go hand in hand for her to be involved in this. That's kind of my take on this, I guess. I think that iPhone face in period dramas is a twofold problem. One, actors and actresses feel the need to do certain things to their appearance in order to stay in the industry, which can result in iPhone face. And two, that execs of these big budget films nowadays demand big names attached to these projects, which means that it can feel like there is a small pool of performers that get a lot of the roles, regardless if they're a good fit for them or not. That's not to say that I think that actors like Margot Robbie or Jacob Elordi shouldn't be in period dramas just because of this whole iPhone face thing. Here is Margot as Queen Elizabeth in Mary Queen of Scots, and Jacob Elordi is starring in Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, which has been filmed on a Victorian set in Edinburgh recently. However, like so many people out there, I don't feel like these two Australian actors, just because they're big names right now, are the best fit for a new, huge Wuthering Heights. I think there could be more applicable actors out there. I'm not naive though. I know these types of period dramas have to make money. That's why I say this whole thing is complicated. But the way that film and television is going these days, it feels like it could be a perfect storm for creating a bunch of uncanny valley films that we might look back on in 20 years and side-eye. In the article, Humanity Erased, Are Veneers Ruining Hollywood?, Hanaya Angus said, in 2010, New York Magazine reported on how the increase in Botox impacted actors' craft and led to stilted performances. Today, the latest culprits are veneers and fillers, which can create an almost uncanny valley feeling. Ironically, this has become a trend at the same time as AI, and its smoothly polished attempts at recreating art and films, not to mention deepfakes. Nothing looks quite right anymore, and nobody can trust the media we're looking at. I don't know what the answer is to iPhone face. I think the biggest thing is we can't be in people's personal lives in order for them to play roles. I don't think that's fair. Maybe the answer is in makeup and costuming and CGI, which has been a great way to really transform actors in period dramas. Maybe that needs to be utilized a bit more. For period dramas that are meant to stick more to the period, unlike Bridgerton, maybe some of these hard and fast rules around time periods that have been loosened, such as characters having their hair down, need to be tightened up a bit more so it feels more period correct. I'm just offering out ideas. I don't really have any solutions. What I do know through researching all of this is that the film industry is complicated. There is so much more behind the scenes at play than we really know about when it comes to things like casting and directing, which means that sometimes these amazing classics come out of big budget productions that we love for years to come. And sometimes they're just duds because of things like miscasting and turning a drama into a comedy. I used to be really frustrated that more big budget adaptations weren't being made, specifically lesser known novels of classic writers like Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey and Anne Bronte's The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. When some of them have finally been made, I've not always felt like the adaptations have been a reflection of telling a timeless story that can now connect to a new generation, but more of a creative pursuit of the director's vision. Films like the 2020 Emma and Little Women, to me, have been great examples of the exception to this. But for a lot of films, it's felt as if them being big budget doesn't necessarily mean that they've been the best of films. In the past, I've complained about lower budget miniseries with grainy filming, wishing for these stories to have big, sweeping film adaptations. But then when they come to fruition, for many of them, they've fallen short for a number of reasons, sometimes simply because 2 hours is not long enough to really tell these stories. In the case of Wuthering Heights, male directors make these kind of decisions all the time and don't necessarily get the level of criticism that female directors do, so I want to give her the benefit of the doubt, and I do hope that this is an adaptation that is reflective of Emily Bronte's work, that it breathes new life into Wuthering Heights for a new generation. And in terms of iPhone face, it's not as if transformative work can't be done through makeup to make this pair of Hollywood bombshells more historical. Here's Margot Robbie as Queen Elizabeth when she had smallpox later in life. As for me, I think I'm going to be thankful for my 8-hour, grainy, smaller budget BBC adaptations and call it a day. Thanks for watching.